The King's English, the color of English. Patricia Didden taught high school English for 25 years at Burke's Christian School in Exeter, Pennsylvania. Now, during this time, she earned her master's degree in English from Kutztown University. Early in her career, she developed a unique system of color coding grammar. This system was met with universal success in her classroom. The King's English uses the 8 basic colors to represent the 8 parts of speech. This method takes the rules of grammar out of the abstract and gives them a concrete meaning hidden in a simple box of crayons or colored pencils. Since color, like music, has no language barrier, this method will be useful to people learning English as a second language. The King's English uses a few simple memory hooks, mental pictures, and acronyms to help students nail down the basic concepts of English grammar. The King's English is a hands-on manual. Most of its 187 pages have a convenient answer key nearby for students to fill in the answers. Parents and teachers could easily use this manual as a year-long grammar course. Say goodbye to lesson plans and hello to the King's English.
Greetings, friends. I am Patricia Didden, and I am here today to share with you how to get the most out of my textbook, The King's English. I taught high school English for 25 years. About 2 weeks into my tenure, I began to realize that I was not really connecting with my students when we would study English grammar. How can I help them to understand these abstract ideas? I asked myself. I knew I needed something visual, but what? Well, there are 8 parts of speech, and there are 8 basic colors in a simple box of crayons. What would happen if I assigned one of these colors to each of the 8 parts of speech, provided a box of crayons for each student, and then helped them to diagram a simple sentence 2 or 3 times a week? The students took to that at once. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, when they came into the classroom, they knew that they should open their notebooks and copy the sentence I had placed on the board. Together, we parsed, diagrammed, and color-coded one simple sentence, and gradually the light dawned. Soon everybody was understanding the basics of English grammar. Today, I will take you through the 3 phases of my course. First, I will explain the color coding method. Then I will show you what I mean by parsing. And finally, I will demonstrate, with the help of my friends here, how to diagram a simple English sentence. First, I'd like to introduce the people who are here to help me today. This is Dr. Earl, playing the part of a retired English professor. We have Gwen, who is Executive Director of Family Promise and also has Palace Project program. Dr. Kay, who is the Director of the
Many Rivers Learning Center.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Tara, who is English and Spanish speaker who teaches English. We have Jean, who is my worthy assistant who did most of my graphics for the book and is a whiz on the computer. And then we have Ronnie, who is an ESL teacher. So we have various people from various groups of parts of living, and they are going to help me today and also perhaps ask some questions later. Well, I taught English, as I mentioned, for most of my adult life. And I have noticed that whenever I mention grammar, people's eyes sort of glaze over. They're not exactly sure what we're talking about, or either they're afraid of it. So what is it about grammar that evokes this response? Well, I think it is because grammar is really abstract. I say preposition. What does that mean? Can you picture a pronoun? No. These things have nothing concrete that you can grab and think about. And so I was trying to think of a method of teaching grammar where you would have concrete material as well as the facts. Most of us are visual learners. Even when you meet a new person, if their name sounds like something you know, you think of that word, and then the next time you see them, you remember it. So you try to put something concrete into the abstract, and that's exactly what I've done with this course. Now, there are actually 4 concrete aids that you can use, and today I'm going to briefly show you how I've used these aids in this book. And I have a picture here, which I have provided all of you with. Does anyone know what this is when you take 4 letters and make a word for each letter? Acronym. Yeah, an acronym. And so I have this first acronym that I've used, a girl named Carrie, okay? Carrie. And these are the 4 types of concrete ideas that I've used for our King's English. The first one being color, C for color. The second would be acronyms. I have several of those. The third is rote memory or repetition, which is not very much fun, but it's necessary, at least a little bit of it. And the final one is I for images or pictures that you connect to parts of speech. Now, these are all mnemonic devices. Pick up your book and turn to page 89, and you will see a picture of the Greek lady whose name was given to the idea mnemonic device. Her name was Mnemosyne, and she was the Greek goddess of memory. Now, this painting is a famous painting by the Victorian artist Dante Gabriel Rossetti. And you will notice when you look at her name that the M is not pronounced. You actually say mnemonic. I have to stop and tell you something funny about that word. One year, my 8th grade students won the spelling bee in our area, so they went on to the county bee. And I had a boy named Jeff, who was our best speller. And when we got there, there were a lot of students there, and when it was Jeff's turn to stand up, the first word he was given was mnemonic. And I said, uh-oh, we go down already. Nobody who's in the 8th grade knows how to spell that word, and I'm listening, and Jeff goes, M-N-E-M-O-N-I-C. Impossible. I don't, to this day, know how he knew that word or even had heard of it. But he went on to at least place in the spelling bee. So, we'll talk a little bit more about mnemonics, but what we need to remember is that this is the major memory devices that people use generally, and what we are using in our course. So now we're going to talk about color. I want to tell you that I don't imagine many, if any of you here, remember that when we went to school, you only had 8 basic colors. And this is a collector's edition of the old 8 basic colors that we had, and we loved them. There was one color, a light blue, that was exactly the color of Confederate uniforms. And you just had certain colors that you used for certain things, but there were only 8. This past Christmas, my daughter Gwen bought me some colors to go with an adult coloring book, and here we have 99 different tints and hues and colors. Just imagine 99. Each one has a name. They're all different. So color has certainly come a long way, but I still am sticking with the 8. And if you have only 8 basic colors, that's all you need, that's all your students need in order to take this course. You can use almost any kinds of colors, but just the main thing is that you have the 8 basic colors. Now, Turn to page 21 in your book, and I will show you, first of all, why I selected, what color I selected for each part of speech. Now, I have some flashcards. These flashcards simply tell you what color I selected, not why, but what color. And I'll go through them quickly. The verb, green. The adverb, purple. The noun, yellow. Pronoun, orange. The adjective, red. Preposition, blue. Conjunction, brown. And interjection, black. These are the 8 basic colors and what part of speech we use for each one. But this is more helpful because I have a graphic here. Thanks to Jean. She helped me with most of these pictures. I just want to give her kudos again because she was a tremendous help and blessing to me. But this is why I selected the pictures, the things I did. Now you look at the verb and you see a little green frog, and what does he usually do? He jumps. He moves around. And of course the verb does that too. The verb moves. The verb is king in our book. Later on we'll find out he's king. He's the most important person in the sentence. You can make a whole sentence out of just a verb. I could walk in the door and say, arise to you, and you'd understand what I meant. And it's a sentence. Now the word you is understood, which is always shown by a little X in parentheses, but you would understand with just a verb. The other thing about a verb is that when you are at a light, traffic light, when it turns green, you go. So that is why we use a verb. Now, the adverb, connected to the verb, I used purple for that because I think adverb is a kingly color, kingly. And in the old days, people were not allowed to wear purple unless they lived in the palace. It's an important kingly color. And I use the word kingly to remind us of an adverb because ly is the ending for almost every adverb. So that's number 2. Then we have yellow for the noun. The reason I selected yellow for the noun is that the sun comes out when you see the noun. Laughed, somebody laughed, he laughed, who laughed? Well, Mickey Mouse laughed, or whoever it might be. And there's your verb, yellow. The sun comes out, you understand what you're talking about. And orange for the pronoun, that's a no-brainer because the pronoun is something like a noun. And the yellow is very much like orange. So that's why we use orange for the pronoun. The adjective, I selected red, and we've got a pretty little apple here to help us remember that, because red is a very showy color. If you see 3 black cars and a red car on the street, you look at the red car, right? It's a showy color. And the adjective is showy. It describes and explains what the noun is. It shows off the noun. And then the preposition. Now, recently, a gentleman from the newspaper came to talk to me about my course, and he said to me, Pat, there's a reason why you selected each color for every other part of speech, but you didn't say why you selected the preposition. And I didn't even notice that. So I had to work at that, and in your book it does not have this, but here's what I came up with. The next morning I had a reason. Preposition is blue because water is blue. Water moves from a small mountain stream all the way down to the great blue ocean. And like water, prepositions are always on the move. Think of it. Over the rainbow, under the bridge, around the corner, behind the next mountain. Those prepositions are always on the move, and so is water. So that's a way to remember preposition color. And of course, conjunction color. This is also a no-brainer because conjunction is the color of rope. And conjunctions hold, brown is the color of rope, and conjunctions hold everything together. and, or, but, nor, for, etc. They hold things together. The final color, black, we don't need to use very often because that's for interjections, words that you add. In fact, they don't even go on the diagram. They're up in the corner. You add those words, and they provide power and punch to your sentence. So we use black for that, and that's the use of those words. Now, I want to take a second to tell you what you will need to get going, to get starting. And if you want to look at page 19, just flip back one page. There are 3 things that you need in order to go with this book. One thing you need is a pocket dictionary. Now, this, you can have any kind of a dictionary, but you can get these little pocket dictionaries for not very much money. And the reason you need a dictionary is that as long as I have been connected with grammar, you would be surprised how often I would come to a word and think, is that a conjunction, or what is that word? And it still happens. I mean, it still happens. Everyone. Is that a noun or a pronoun? It happens to all of us. Well, all you have to do is look up the word, and right after the word in an italicized, abbreviated section there is what part of speech it is. So you just keep looking up words all the time for the part of speech to get it right. And then you want to provide your students with, I think it's 13, 3x5 cards. Because we have to, in this section called repetition or rote memory, we have to have a little bit of memory. And they will be writing the things they have to memorize on these cards. More about that later. And of course, the third thing is your 8 crayons. So those are the 3 things that you need in order to start. Very inexpensive and easy to get. Now, if you would like to turn to page 53, I believe it is, you will find a reference to the castle. Where it says, I'm sorry, wrong page, where it says Grammarland, page 48 and 49. Just go back one page. What I did for this section on parts of speech, the first section, was write a story about an imaginary land, an imaginary place. And if you look at this, you'll see that Grammarland is a small principality located at the foot of the Lesser Alps, not far from Austria. And I made up an imaginary family plus all the palace workers in this palace. And all the stories that you have here, until we come up to the section How to Parse, till we get to the end of this section, about page 84, 85, is about the people who live in this palace. And there are 2 girls and a boy for the children, 2 princesses and a prince, the mother and the father, and they all have a pet, which you learn about here. And so Grammarland is the place where we go to do these things. Now, I might show you, you can turn any page here in the middle of this section where the parts of speech are located, and you will see that at first, if you start, say, on page 25, 26 and 27, you have an easy reference place to find out how to recognize the parts of speech. Later on, each part of speech, I've given a section called How to Spot a Verb, How to Spot a Noun, etc. And those are also as we go along. Now, if you want to look at page 30 and 31, you will notice that the answer key in this section is right next to the part that you're working on. And right away, your teacher's genes say, oh no, we don't want the answer right there. But you do, because this is not a test. This is a learning experience. Now, I know it's hard to get this out of your mind. if you are a teacher, but this is a learning experience. I have designed this book so that anybody, a person out in the jungle by himself that wants very much to learn English and move into town so he could maybe go to school and maybe better himself, could have this book, go through it, and actually learn all the basic grammar by himself. So that's what this book is for. The answer key is handy. It's right next door to every worksheet, every section. And you can tell at once, when you look at this, what the word is. If you'd like to turn over to page 55, you'll see that I went through that section where we're working on adjectives and already marked out the nouns in red. The reason I did that was that I wanted to make it easy for the student to look on either side of the noun and to find the adjectives, because they're usually right next door to the noun. And when you look at that, you can see that that works out that way. And this is another way of using images to put in your head how words should go in a sentence. So that's it about the answer key. And now, at the very end of this section, we will see the thing, page 84. After these students have learned all the information about the wonderful royalty, the king, the queen, the two girls, and the son who live at Grey Towers. By the way, Grey Towers is the name of our castle. We find out how you connect parts of speech to royalty. And here we simply say the verb is the king. There's another page that you'll come to a little later, on page 112 actually. It's this one. And it says, "It's all about me," says king verb. And we have our wonderful king here. I love this king. My brother-in-law helped me find him. He's just perfect. And this king realizes that you can't do anything in English without verbs. First of all, you can't explain any part of speech without the verb. When you start to parse and diagram the sentence, you start with that, with the verb. And finally, in my next book, the book on verbals, you find out that verbals are just everywhere in the English language. So it's all about me, says the king. And then we realize on page 84 that the verb is the king, the subject of the sentence is the queen, and the complement would be the princess or prince, the children. Those are the only three that live on the line here. Everything else is underneath the line, what I call the baseline. And all those adjectives, adverbs, and prepositional phrases that we use to expand our knowledge of what we're talking about, those are all underneath the baseline. Now, please look with me at page 85. You should be right there. And you will see that what you need to do is make friends with flashcards. You know, time dulls memory if you're a person. If you're a computer, it doesn't at all. You get that input of whatever is there. It's the same, it stays. But you start forgetting, I start forgetting the minute I leave a room. What color the person's sweater was, what went on, you start forgetting those things. So time does dull memory. So we have no choice but to resort to repetition, or what is commonly known, rote memory. As I mentioned to you before, I don't use very much rote memory, but I do have some cards. And pretend that these cards are the same as the 3x5 cards that the students will be making. On one side, they'll take a red pencil or whatever color they want, and they will write, as you will see on page 85, 86, and 87, the red word that's there. On the back, they will write whatever I've told them there to put on the back of their flashcard. And it shouldn't be too much to fit on any flashcard. Now, what we hope they will do with these cards is to put them in their purse or their pocket or their glove box of the car or by their bed at night. If they're really good students, they'll pick these things up and look at them anytime they can. If you're teaching, just start your class with these. And that's really all it takes, a few weeks of doing that before they get to know it. But then remember, it's memory. So you have to go over it every now and then. And for example, if you're doing the parts of speech, you look at this little bit of information, and this is all you need to know to diagram any kind of a verb. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been. Those are the 8 linking verbs, important to remember. And then if an action verb, you say, can I do this thing? Can I blow smoke? Can I sleep? You know. And then finally, the intransitive verb that simply shows existence, like the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. Wept is an intransitive verb. Can't do anything, doesn't need to do anything, you just weep. It's just there. And so those are the 3 basic verbs, and you just go over those and over those until you have them. Same thing with everything else. And those are very important. So this is the end of part 1. And the part 2 will tell us a little bit about parsing, which is a word that is probably not familiar to most of us. And part 3 will give us a little information about diagramming. Now, on page 91, you are going to see one of our major images. This is the flip-flops. Now, when you think of flip-flops, you think about sunshine and sand between your toes and good things, don't you? So in order to parse a sentence, you are going to use FL as your idea. Now, from the first part of flip-flops, we're going to go from that. First of all, I'm going to tell you for a minute what I have this parsley up here for. The word parse comes from the Latin, the word parsley comes from the Latin word parse, I should say, parsley in our language. And you look at parsley and it's made up of many small parts. And so when you parse something, you take a large whole and make it into many small parts. So that's what we're going to do with this simple sentence I have on the board. Hope is the heartbeat of the soul. Now, first of all, we have this F, which means we are going to find the verb and its helpers. If you have your markers, you can underline your verb with green. If you don't have markers, double line under the verb. But you have to start with the verb. Then you look at the second thing, the L, which is locate the subject. What are we talking about? What is the heartbeat? Well, it's the hope. One line under that. And then you might have a complement, which means, very simply, something that completes the thought, right? Complement complete. And so you do have a word that completes the thought, which is, hope is what? Heartbeat. Heartbeat. Okay, so we're going to bracket that. And what is of the soul? It's like the blue water that's always moving. Prepositional what? Phrase. Good. Prepositions never occur outside of their phrase. They never leave their community. They're always there. And so we have a prepositional phrase. So look, S is the subject. This is a linking verb, isn't it? Because it links the subject with the complement. And the heartbeat, direct object, prepositional phrase of the soul. And you've parsed that sentence just like that. Now you have to do that every time, and I've got, as you will see, quite a few pages where they do that work. But again, we've got to come back to Old King verb. And I've got my second major image here, who is a girl named Olivia. And Olivia, you look on page 89 and 90, and you'll find this in your book. Olivia is a traffic cop because she lets people go like a verb does. And so there are 3 types of verbs. That's one of the things you learn when you parse. You have to tell us which type of verb it is. And so right here, I will put this, what we say. Olivia, okay. Okay, let's go. That's the O. L-I, Olivia, which is for a linking verb. That's the kind of verb we just talked about. V-I, which is an intransitive verb. And it's really funny because when grammar, when you talk about an intransitive verb, you talk about a verb intransitive. And so there it is, verb intransitive. And finally, the A, which is an action verb. I'll just write this much. And then action. Now, this is all you need to know about verbs. And by golly, it spells out Olivia. The O isn't anything about verbs, is it? But here you have it, Olivia. So that's your second helper. Okay, so that's the main thing we are learning. And again, you have 4 more flashcards here on page 119 and 120. Now, these are important flashcards because they give you a few words. Here's flip-flops, and here on the back you have the few words you need to know about flip-flops. But you or your students will make their own flashcards based on that page. And the last thing I want to show you is on page 123 and 124. Now, Jean and I are very proud of these 2 pages because these are pages that we made up for ourselves. Thank you, Jean. Did she do a nice job on that? I stand in such awe of her because I do not know how to do graphics, but this is our wonderful pages that explain what you do when you diagram. And don't you love this? Don't you love this little statement at the top? Read it with me, would you? I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. Now, think about that for a minute. Only 4 colors ever appear on the baseline. Underneath the baseline are the adjective, adverb, and prepositional phrases. And you can see that very easily on these 2 sheets. Now, the only thing I want to show you before we finish is one more thing. There are 7 types of sentences. And before you get very far on here, you will come to our little 7 types of sentences that Jean and I made with using the 7 dwarfs from the old fairy story, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. And you can turn back to page 100, and here are these 7 types of sentences in color. And you will see, I did another one of these for my second book on the 7 days of the week. So I'm going to show you this one, because you can see clearly on this one how your colors go. First, there are only 7, think of it, there are only 7 ways that you can say everything in English. And those 7 ways are here. I'll start with this. Sunday shines. Do you see the subject and the verb? Monday introduces wash day. Subject, action verb, direct object. Tuesday is ordinary. Subject, linking verb, and an adjective, predicate adjective it's called. Now, you can always test the adjective by going back. Can you say an ordinary Tuesday? Yes, an ordinary Tuesday. So the adjective goes in front of the verb, noun, it makes sense, and therefore that's the only time you use red on the line. Always it's either just green or yellow on the line. Then we have Wednesday is hump day. Okay, you come to noun, subject, linking verb is, and hump day is a compound noun. So you've got yellow, green, yellow again. Now the second page is a little bit more complex. Fortunately, these sentences aren't used very often. Almost everything we say is on this page. But Thursday promises people hope. We're looking toward the weekend. And we have the subject, the action verb, the promises them hope. So we have the direct object on the line. And underneath, we put a little line that means two people. That's our indirect object. Then we have Friday offers everyone joy. We have four things on the line. Friday subject, offers action verb. Direct object is everyone. And you notice that's orange. Why would that be orange instead of yellow? Because orange is a pronoun. And everyone is a pronoun. It's not a specific noun. But it's not done. Friday offers everyone. It's not done. Offers them joy, another noun, which is your what we call objective complement, completes the object. And then finally, people prefer Saturday sunny. People, subject, prefer, action verb, direct object Saturday, but it's not complete. So you've got to have an objective complement that completes it, and this time it's an adjective. A sunny Saturday, right? So it's an adjective. That's all you need to know in order to know everything there is about English grammar, is what you have here. So this is what we want our students to know. Now, I'm going to tell you one story. We used to know, and still know, a man by the name of Otto who came from Norway. And he lived in North Jersey, and he was telling us this story. They got a new pastor in their church, and he had just come over from Norway and was still working with the language. But one of the leading members of the church passed away, and he had the funeral. So they were all out standing around the grave, and they were looking very sad. And he said, "Friends, we are sad today because our friend has just left us. But remember, this is only the shell we have in front of us. The nut has gone to heaven." Now, this is what happens with you. This is the shell of the King's English. The kernel or the nut is there for you to unwrap and to use.